Hey guys, Britt here. Welcome to End Times Bible Prophecy. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Well, was this the big news of 2023? There were a whole bunch of stories that took place this year, but in hindsight, one of these might, looking back on it, be seen as one of the biggest news stories of the year. Now, what we're going to talk about, it may not be a pivot point in human history, but I think that it's an admission that we have entered a new era militarily, a whole new age militarily, and one that has significant implications for the fulfillment of end times Bible prophecy. So what am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about a speech that Benjamin Netanyahu delivered to the United Nations back on September 22nd. Now, at the time, this popped up in the news and I made note of it, and I was reading through the speech and preparing to do a video just like this one on the topic of what he discussed in that speech. And then the October 7th Hamas attack took place, and that just sort of pushed it off the radar, off of the front burner. But as I was doing some housekeeping, cleaning up some of my files toward the end of the year, I thought, here's that story. I never did a video on that, but it may very well be proved to be one of the most important stories or the biggest news of the whole year. So I can't just let this pass by without talking about it. So we're going to talk about what was in the speech, why it's such a big deal, and why it has absolute direct implications for the end times, the fulfillment of end times Bible prophecy. But before we dive into that speech, I want to take a look at this right here. So I had the pleasure this week of appearing on Hope for Our Times with Pastor Tom Hughes. The title of that video is It's Engineered to Trap You, It's All Planned. We talked about a whole number of subjects, so I encourage you, if you haven't seen that yet, to go check it out. You can go to the Hope for Our Times website, go to the Watch and Listen, look at the latest live streams, find it there. You can download the Hope for Our Times app, which I highly encourage doing. That way you have a direct connection with Tom, regardless of whatever censorship takes place on some of the platforms, and you all know what I'm talking about. On that note, you can watch it on YouTube, right? On the Hope for Our Times YouTube channel, if you just go to the videos section, there it is right there. Or you can go on Rumble to Hope for Our Times. And I don't think it's on there right this second as I'm filming this, but I'm sure that it will be very shortly. So make sure to check that out if you haven't seen it already. Make sure to subscribe to Hope for Our Times. Again, download the app if you have not done that. I have it myself. It's awesome. So let's check out this speech from Benjamin Netanyahu. So this is from the Times of Israel from back in September when this took place. It says, full text of Netanyahu's United Nations address on the cusp of historic Saudi-Israel peace. And guys, this is important. I'm not saying it's not important, but they totally missed the headline here, just as they did with another story that we're going to talk about in just a moment. But he opens his speech talking about we stand on the cusp of possible blessings and possible curses. Then he talks about Middle East peace plan. He talks about a whole bunch of subjects. The threat of Iran, those are relevant. I'll put the link to this article, pin it in the comments, put it in the description so you can go check this out for yourself, read it. It's all important. But what caught my eye was way at the end, and I'm just going to skip right over to it, where he talks about another topic, artificial intelligence. So let's see what he has to say about this, because again, this should have been the headline, and we're going to talk about why. He says, ladies and gentlemen, whether our future will prove to be a blessing or a curse will also depend on how we address perhaps the most consequential development of our time, the rise of artificial intelligence. And what he says next is very relevant. There's a book right over my shoulder, Racing Toward Armageddon. Put it out in 2017. It's based on writings going back over 20 years ago, where I was pointing out there are these new technologies coming. We're going to see artificial intelligence, and we're going to see quantum computing, and we're going to see molecular manufacturing and swarm technology. And we're going to see people pushing transhumanism. And at the time, all of that stuff seemed sort of far out. And I knew that it was a couple of decades into the future at least. But here we are a couple of decades in the future. So back then I said, guys, this is very speculative in nature. But we see this trend technologically, and we see what the Bible tells us about the end times. And unless these end times prophecies are fulfilled in the near term, then at some point when these intersect, the development of these technologies reaching critical mass will, not might, but will lead to the fulfillment of the end times prophecies written about in the Bible. And I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment. So we have yet to see those prophecies fulfilled in another way. So now we've gone from, well, this is speculative to this is a high probability event. In all likelihood, the development of these technologies will lead to the fulfillment of end times Bible prophecy, as we're going to talk about shortly, because we're getting closer. These past 2 decades have passed by. Those end times prophecies were not fulfilled by another means during that time. So now we are in a time where, okay, these technologies are coming to fruition. And when they do, if those prophecies haven't been fulfilled already, they will lead to the fulfillment of those prophecies. And it is indicative of the times in which we live, the age in which we live, and what's going to happen in the near future. So let's see what else he says here. Because this is pretty much like right out of writings, the things I've been writing for over 20 years now. It says the AI revolution is progressing at lightning speed. It took centuries for humanity to adapt to the agricultural revolution. It took decades to adapt to the industrial revolution. We may have but a few years to adapt to the AI revolution. And I would add, think about the turmoil that took place during the Industrial Revolution. No doubt, humanity's quality of life, the standard of living for the average human being, benefited greatly from the Industrial Revolution. But from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution until recent times, we've seen a lot of upheaval and turmoil as a result of that. A lot of dislocation, a lot of people going from farms to cities, all sorts of things that took place, lots of jobs that were lost, and we hear people talking about that with artificial intelligence as well. They conveniently leave out that during the Industrial Revolution, whole new jobs were created. But nevertheless, there was a lot of suffering and upheaval and turmoil, political revolution, all sorts of things that took place as a result of that over the course of 2 centuries. Now we're looking at combining all of that, all of what took place during the Industrial Revolution could take place inside of just a few years. How quickly can the world adapt to that? What sort of turmoil is that going to create within the world? And that's really a whole different topic. We're going to focus on one and specifically that he's talking about right here. He says, the perils are great and they are before us. The disruption of democracy, the manipulation of minds, the decimation of jobs, the proliferation of crime, and the hacking of all the systems that facilitate modern life. Yet, even more disturbing is the potential eruption of AI-driven wars that could achieve an unimaginable scale. Guys, this right here should have been their headline. Because here we have a significant world leader talking about the eruption of AI-driven wars that could lead to absolute catastrophe on a scale that most people have yet to imagine. And I think this really goes hand in hand with the comment that Vladimir Putin made back in September 2017 when he said the leader in artificial intelligence will rule the world, right? So we're not talking about we'll have a big advantage, is going to be the number one economic powerhouse. No, we'll rule the world. And so embedded in that statement, along with this statement right here by Benjamin Netanyahu, is an admission that mutual assured destruction has a shelf life. It's going away. It's becoming obsolete. There is a time when the world will not be governed by the prospect of nuclear weapons destroying one nation or another. There's a new technology coming that will replace that will make that obsolete. And so what that means is we are on the cusp of the most dangerous time in human history since really the Cuban Missile Crisis or the Cold War. However you want to look at it, certainly the most dangerous time in the last 30 years. Once we get to a point where we have the breakthroughs in technology that are coming, when we have this critical mass and the use of artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and I believe the key is molecular manufacturing. Very few people are talking about that, but I believe that's the most significant of these, and AI will enable that to come forward much more quickly than it otherwise would. Once we get to that point, mutual assured destruction is no longer applicable. And that advantage, whoever holds that advantage, whatever nation or group of nations holds that advantage, will use that advantage, not might, but will use that advantage to conquer the entire globe. That's what Vladimir Putin meant when he said, we'll rule the world. He wasn't saying that in a symbolic sense. He meant that in literally, will rule the world. And so embedded in this statement by Benjamin Netanyahu is acknowledgement of that, because why do I say they must use that advantage? They will use that advantage to conquer the world, regardless of what the intent of that leading nation is. They will use that advantage to conquer the globe. Well, the reason they will do that is because to allow another power to engage in an arms race with you, an unstable arms race where you have these massive breakthroughs that in the past took decades and are now taking place in a single day. When you have that type of change, it creates a volatile situation. It creates enormous distrust. It's impossible to verify what your enemy has. Creates a very volatile situation in a place where you have no more mutual assured destruction. You have two potential powers that are building weapons of immense destructive power. And what would happen, he writes here, is the potential eruption of an AI-driven war on an unimaginable scale. So you would have complete destruction on a global scale, and beyond anything we can probably comprehend, if this were allowed to happen, if you have these two powers do this. So whoever's the leading power will use that advantage to eliminate any competition. He somewhat acknowledges that here. Let's see what he says here. He says, the world's leading nations, however competitive, must address these dangers. We must do so quickly, and we must do so together. We must ensure that the promise of an AI utopia does not turn into an AI dystopia. So guys, this is where the world is headed right now. We're seeing with Israel's war with Hamas, we see with the Russia-Ukraine war, we're seeing the use of smaller, more sophisticated drones. We're seeing those drones being deployed in swarms. We're seeing AI embedded into those drones and learning on the battlefield. This is only, these conflicts only accelerate this development, as does the increasing development of AI itself. And so we're going to see more sophisticated technologies in terms of swarms of drones, smaller drones, more powerful drones. And the key is when we see molecular manufacturing reach critical mass, and I don't believe we will see that. I think we'll be gone by that point, because one of the reasons probably the primary reason we don't have people talking about that is because just like the nuclear bomb was theoretical and talked about in certain smaller circles until the whole world became aware of it at once, right? The world became aware of the potential of nuclear weapons, the prospect of a nuclear weapon when it was used, right? So most people, yes, there were lots of people who understood the theories behind creating a nuclear weapon. But the average person, the average citizen in the world, had no clue that there was even a remote capability of building something like what was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki until it actually happened. That's when they became aware of it. I believe the same thing will happen with molecular manufacturing. There's lots of information out there. There's lots of theory. There's people that have been talking about this for years. But we won't have an event as we had with ChatGPT, where we have a press conference in Silicon Valley and somebody's up on stage and says, look at our molecular manufacturing we just created. No, the world will find out about it when a nation state or a group of nations uses that to conquer the world. And I believe that's a tribulation period event. I strongly believe that that's very well what is written in Revelation 6. Again, I think we're moving from the realm of speculation, where we were talking about this 20 years ago, to we're getting closer and closer to this highly probable that that's what Revelation 6 describes as this use of molecular manufacturing, these swarm technologies, in tandem with AI and quantum computing, to build an overwhelming military force that just completely conquers the globe. And so we're entering that era. We talked earlier this year about the U.S. Department of Defense and the Replicator Initiative, which is a direct reference to molecular manufacturing, and their goal is to, within 12 to 18 months, to be able to deploy thousands of drones by air, land, and sea simultaneously at low cost. So there's a push to have weapons that are lower cost, and there's a reason for that. And one of those reasons is the Ukraine-Russia conflict has exposed really the, I guess, inability of conventional weapons to stand up against the evolving landscape of warfare. So think about a very expensive conventional weapon, let's say your most sophisticated tank that the U.S. can create. Maybe it takes a decade or more for a defense contractor to develop the plans for this tank and test it and roll it out into the real world, and it's at great expense, millions and billions of dollars for these weapons. And then they're destroyed by, $10,000 worth of drones. So you have to see, well, okay, what we're doing right now isn't working. We can't spend a decade developing something that becomes that's easily defeated by a weapon that really becomes obsolete a couple of months later when a newer, better version comes out. What we need to be doing is developing those expendable weapons, that expendable hardware at lower cost. And if we can drive that cost down as close to zero as possible, then we can invest the billions into the development of the software to control those expendable munitions. And then by expendable munitions, I'm talking about, drones the size of a bird, drones the size of a bee, smaller, more powerful drones that can engage in swarm action, be exploding munitions on the battlefield, but also be aware of what's taking place on the battlefield, taking surveillance of the battlefield. Drones that can be manufactured on the battlefield as close as possible to the target, to the mission that's taking place, being able to deploy those wave after wave until the mission is accomplished. Building that capability is a capability that there is no defense to currently. They're talking about, and I know some people have talked in the comments about, microwave type weapons to send out and just destroy these in the air. Oh, it's so easy to do that. No, it is not, because first off, there's a certain range to those microwaves. Let's say that you send those out 100 yards or a mile or whatever it may be. You're going to destroy not only whatever drones are within that range, but any of your electronic infrastructure as well. So there's a limit to how far you want to send that out. You also have to think, well, the drone swarms can attack from all directions simultaneously, so you would have to be able to send it out all at once. What if the drones know your range? You got AI and it's learning the range of your microwave weapon, and it knows that it's, 200 feet or 50 yards or whatever it may be. Well, then it's going to learn to stop short of that and then fire or attack from that shorter range. The AI is going to learn to defeat these systems, is my point. And so this is a time of very rapid change that's going to take place on the battlefield, heading into a time when we have a critical breakthrough that gives one nation or group of nations. Based on the Bible, I would sort of lean toward a group of 10 nations. But a nation or a group of nations, the power to circumvent mutual assured destruction and conquer the globe, and that is a power that they will use. So I think this speech by Netanyahu will prove to be, along with Putin's statement from 2017, one of those admissions we received from world leaders that times have changed, the era has changed, the era of nuclear weapons and mutual assured destruction is coming to an end. And what replaces it, this new regime, demands a global government. And so, without spending another 30 minutes talking about this, hopefully you can see how this has a direct impact on the fulfillment of end times Bible prophecy and what the Bible has said in advance, foretold, will come in the end times. And guys, we're on the cusp of that. Now, does this mean we'll see this breakthrough tomorrow? It's possible. I don't know. I don't think so. I don't think we're that close. But are we, 5, 10, 15 years, somewhere in that range? Yes, I think anywhere in that range, once we start getting out beyond 15 or 20 years, I would expect that unless some catastrophic event impacts civilization in such a way that these technologies can no longer develop, we will get to that point. And once we get to that point, those technologies will be used to conquer the globe. The Bible doesn't mention a global government being established before this end times period. In fact, we read Daniel chapter 2, we know that this global government comes in the end times, and it is only defeated by Jesus Christ. It is not defeated by human power. So I would not expect a global government to appear before and then go away and then a new one comes later. I would expect whatever global government appears is this 10 nation, the feet, the toes and the statue in Daniel chapter 2 that we read about, that is the final global empire, the revived Roman Empire. So, guys, I believe we're getting closer and closer to this time. We can see this in the headlines. We're seeing what we've talked about for years coming to fruition. So that's my thoughts. Hope you had a very Merry Christmas. God willing, our next video, we're going to talk about what we would expect to see going forward in 2024. So leave your comments below. Let me know what you think. Make sure to hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. And God willing, I will see you then. Bye. If you want to learn more about the end times and Bible prophecy, make sure to sign up for my free monthly newsletter and get your copy of my free ebook, 7 Signs of the End Times. Just follow the link in the description to get your free book. Also, make sure to check out all of my books. Just look up Brit Gillette on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple iBooks, Google Books, Kobo, or anywhere books are sold. Thanks for watching today, and until next time, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith.